How's it going, Raiders? My name is Ryan, and this is TRC episode 21. Today marks the inaugural episode where we are focusing primarily on Battle for Azeroth content, as well as the very first episode of the Battle for Main project. Today, we're going to be showcasing the Priest class. And as Marty says on the intro, can we pull already? Tanks, pull timer on you.
The heroes have made it to the glorious finale.
Alright, here we go, guys. Set up new chairs, focus up, let's do this. Alright, guys, get buffed up.
Okay, so we want to soak the annihilations,
Get your shit together.
then we want to target the annihilator,
Put them big girl panties on.
move back to avoid damage from eradication,
I think I've disconnected.
then we target the decimator,
Can we pull already?
then we
Pre-bot.
target boss.
I hope you can swim in molten lava.
Let's kill this dragon.
Welcome back to another week of TRC Raiders. My name is Ryan, as I've already said in the intro. Joining me today, as always, from the land of Denmark is one Martin Larsen. What's up, buddy?
I'm pretty good. I just had to quickly mute the Twitch stream because I was listening to the intro over there as well, and all of a sudden you were talking twice, so I got a little bit confused. But now that that's sorted, I'm good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Now, we're doing things flip-flop today. Normally, you're starting with us and then going to your other show, but today you're coming to us from your other show. So, and I know you kind of talked about some things we're going to be talking about today, so you should be kind of well and prepped and ready to go, yeah?
Shaking things up, you know. Don't
Nice. I like it. I like
buy. You
it.
know, if you do it the same way every time, then it tends to get boring, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, also joining us today for the first time, guys, is the other co-host I mentioned in the past episode. We're bringing him on for this project, and I'm very excited to introduce Oreo. He's a good friend of mine. He also raids with me. Oreo, what is going up? Coming from Canada.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Not much. I'm excited for some Agermore tonight later on.
Yeah, yeah. Even with the nerfs, it'll be fun. It has been fun, to say that sarcastically. Today, 2 continents, 3 countries covered with our hosts today. We have Denmark, Canada, and US of A. So if you hear any sort of distinctual phrases or accents, blame it on the 2 other guys. It's not my fault. But Marty, so Oreo's already said that we're going to be doing Agrimar progression again tonight. How has progression been going for you over on the EU front?
Nothing new dead yet. I mean, I think we did talk about last week that we got Imona down, right? So we had some decent tries on what's his name? Kenny G, right?
Yep.
And that's
Kenny
the next
G.
one. Yeah. So we had some decent tries. So it's only a matter of time before he goes down. It doesn't seem too bad, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit of a learning curve. There's a lot going on, especially you get to later phases with the balls, and yeah, it's just once people kind of get the hang of it, the fight shit. It's one of those ones where, like, you'll get a bunch of like low attempts, and then all of a sudden it'll just click into place, and he'll drop.
Yeah.
Just gotta be patient on that.
Yeah, I mean, or you could be like me, you know, in our second attempt in, first time ever with the group who's already killed it, and I wipe us at 2% because I face first into a ball. Yeah, but that's okay. So, just a little bit of housekeeping here, guys. I want to kind of thank everybody that has been listening, or even those of you that are joining us for the first time today. We just concluded with last week's episode, the entirety of our first year, effectively, of doing this show. 2 seasons, one with Cole and Dan in the first season as my co-host, who, you know, both kind of had some stuff that pulled them away from both the game and some podcasting stuff. And then, you know, Marty joined me for season 2. And we are still currently in season 2, but we are stepping ourselves into another project series leading up into BFA. And obviously Oreo is joining us for the first time today. So I just wanted to give a big shout out and thank you to all of you listening, both past, present, and future. It's been a very big learning curve. I went back and listened to the very first episode where half of my co-hosts were on their phones, and we all had really crappy mics, and the audio was absolutely horrible.
Never go back and listen to your first episodes. I mean, we over here we can actually go back and look at and listen to episodes before we actually launched them, because we did 6 beta episodes, so to speak, that never hit the internet. and they never will.
Well, that might be my mistake. I'm very impatient, so for me, it was like, let's just jump into it and try it versus
Yeah, no,
let's work the kinks out ahead of time. You know.
that's fine. I mean, that's podcasting. That's how you learn. So
So, yeah, but today is going to mark, we may have some episodes later on before BFA hits where we kind of look back at Legion as a whole. That's yet to be determined, but effectively, as of right now, primarily our focus for each and every episode will be on BFA content. Obviously, with this project, we will be showcasing at least one class. We're going to have a few episodes where we might showcase more than one class, especially the Demon Hunters. But couple of just kind of rule sets for you guys here, some disclaimers before we kind of jump into things. As we go through each class, please keep in mind that the information we are bringing to you is primarily opinion based. It's kind of how we feel about things as we test things out, and we make our determinations, and which is also subject to change because not everything is finite and set in stone with the alpha, which is now the beta. And so things that we may say to you if you're listening to it on a podcatcher and not on the live stream may have changed since we recorded the episode. So don't throw us under the fire, so to speak, or onto the
and
fire.
I mean, Shadow Priest, which we're going to talk about later today, like very soon, I guess, even has like a talent called Coming Soon,
Yep.
which is awesome.
And so we're going to do our best with each and every episode to talk effectively as much as possible about each and every spec and class. And again, these are our opinions as raiders, how we kind of feel about the game and how we like to play it. And so you may disagree. And so one of the things I am going to do is, in order to facilitate this project, I have gone forward and I've made some spreadsheets for everybody to fill out. Each one of us will be tasked with a specialization as the quasi expert. That's not to say we haven't gone and tested the other specializations for each episode. But like for today, I'm going to be talking to Shadow, Oreo will be talking to Disc, and Marty will be talking to Holy. And so they've had a spreadsheet that they've kind of filled out with some questions, some kind of standardized points we want to cover with each and every class. And so I will make those spreadsheets available in the show notes after every single episode, so that you guys can go on and look at it. And I'll even upload a blank template so that if you guys want to start your own little spreadsheet or whatever, helping you determine your own main choice, you can do that. I'm mainly pointing at you, Dusty from Blizzard Umbrella, who is infatuated with spreadsheets. But yeah, just a couple house things. Like I said, guys, don't throw us in the fire. Everything is opinion based and subject to change. And we're gonna have to work through some kinks too as we go through this. This is our very first episode, so we're trying some things, and we're gonna kind of go forward with what works, and we may remove things that aren't working as we see fit. So, with that being said, before we jump into the priest class for today, I wanted to take a moment. Before the show, I haven't had a chance to fully watch the Q&A, most recent one, in the video format, but I did read through all of the bullet points. How do you guys feel about this? I guess I'll start with you, Oreo, since you're the new face today. What was your takeaway from the Q&A?
Mm, I like that they actually addressed the GCD changes. That was kind of the biggest point going forward that everybody had a complaint about. They came to the assumption that they didn't want it to be a push one button and then you just wait for the next time you have to push that one button again. They want it to be a thing of skill, not latency or timing kind of thing. So I thought it was interesting. Everybody seems to always want to talk about allied races on that, and they kind of shied away and went more for the more core mechanic stuff, which was good.
Yeah, that was kind of my takeaway too. And my initial thoughts when they first brought up this GCD stuff a couple weeks ago, initially it was kind of like, oh, screw you guys, you're really going to slow the pace of the game down. But I kind of understood their mentality behind it. They were trying to eliminate situations where if you have 6 different buttons you can press in a given situation, that you could press all of them at once, and just, they wanted to force people into situations where you have to choose between one or the other. And primarily one of the examples they used was, let's say you're a healer, you're standing in fire, and your tank is almost dead, and you either have to make the decision of healing yourself and then stepping out of the fire, or healing your tank and dying. You have to make the decision. Or like in a PvP situation, if you're a DPS and you've got your opponent almost dead, but your healer's almost dead too, do you or sorry, you're almost dead. So do you help your healer out and do you use a defensive cooldown to save yourself? Or do you take the risk and use your offensive cooldown to hopefully get the kill and just hope that your healer can keep you up? So they're trying to make players decide, and put them.
It's a really easy solution. Just remove PvP, right?
Yeah, and this will be one of the only times you'll probably hear us talk about PvP is just because I feel like that example was a really good example and to kind of showcase what their mentality was behind the GCD issue. And I'm after reading the bullet points and looking at the Q&A, I think they've addressed some things and talked about some things that kind of put me personally at ease with the whole GCD thing, because I was very worried that we were going to turn into a Final Fantasy thing where, you're going to press a button and have 2 seconds to wait before you have something else to press. That just doesn't feel good. I mean, even the slower paced classes in the game right now are much faster paced than you would see in games like Final Fantasy, and that doesn't interest me whatsoever. And they even touched on that in the Q&A. They talked about how WoW is meant to be a fast-paced game, and so they are going to try and continue with that, but also force players into situations where they have to make a decision and they don't have 10 different buttons they can press all at once. So, Marty, was there anything with the Q&A that kind of stood out to you, or that have you even had a chance to look at it?
I kind of hoped that you wouldn't ask me, that we would just move on, because I've been doing in real life stuff the past few days, so I totally missed there wasn't a Q&A. But I mean, I think overall, I think I'm quite happy that they're moving a little bit away from this again, the GCD, because on alpha/beta, I felt like it's been feeling a little bit slow sometimes, and especially when it comes to healing. And I know we'll probably go more into it later, being the priest episode, but I've kind of felt like I was back in Cataclysm dungeons, and I got really, really worried, to be honest, because that's I didn't like it back then. It was not fun back then, so why would it be fun now?
Yeah. Well, and I'm actually kind of glad you said that, because the whole GCD thing and kind of effectively, whether that was their primary focus or not, slowing things down a little bit, almost feels like kind of a Cataclysm situation around those expansions, either side of Cataclysm, when they made decisions to kind of deflate the amount of spells that were out in the game for people to use, just kind of cleaning house. Things have got overinflated, too many spells suppressed, that kind of thing. So it feels like they're kind of doing that here, in hopes to kind of keep the health of the game long-term wise in a good position. They're kind of removing some things that are kind of unnecessary or just going to make things overly complicated in the long run. So, but we're going to poke fun at Marty and give him crap for not listening to it. But realistically, I think this is another good point, and this has always been one of the intentions of this show, is we are not standing before you as developers, as trying to say that we know everything. We're players just like each and every single one of you, whether you're an LFR hero or a hardcore Mythic World Race Raider. We enjoy this game as much as you. None of us are making a living or paying our bills for, through this game. So the fact that Marty didn't have a chance to get to the Q&A showcases his laziness. But no, I mean, it showcased the fact that he has a real life, and this game isn't his sole focus. And part of the reason we do this show is so that we can force ourselves to have time to talk about the game when we may not necessarily get that chance throughout the week outside of our given raid day. So enough chit chat. You guys ready to do this? You want to talk some pre stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool, man.
Yes.
So one last caveat as we go into this, you're going to notice there's a reoccurring theme, and Marty's already said it once. I think I remember Oreo kind of alluding to it. But some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, we may allude to the fact that it feels a bit slow or it feels a bit lacking. And Blizzard has said as much, that one of the reasons that may be the case right now is the fact that you don't have access to the entirety of the game, and one of those things being Azeroth armor. So a lot of what feels like it may be missing, it may be a result of Azeroth armor later down the road, which we don't fully have access to yet. So again, as we talk to things, we're only talking to what we have access to, and there may be things that we don't have access to yet. So take everything we say with a grain of salt, please. But first and foremost, so I'm going to be talking Shadow today. Oreo will be talking Disc, and Marty will be talking Holy. So with that being said, let's talk Shadow. Go and do this. So for those of you watching, you're going to see your screens change over here, and you're going to see a spreadsheet plus my lovely mug, sans the other two guys. And so we're going to talk Shadow today, guys. So Shadow is a builder spender class, and it is a builder spender class, but not necessarily in the traditional sense like you would see with any other builder class out in the game. It's kind of a hybrid between a builder spender and an affliction lock. So this class pops itself in and out of void form as it builds its insanity and eventually going insane in void form for a time being. And that's kind of how it primarily does its damage. It is a dot based class that manages its insanity, both in and out of void form. And so obviously the specialization is Shadow. Let me go ahead and do this so you guys can see as I'm going through it. Here we go. Cool. And so one of the first things we want to talk about here is, obviously I've done the brief description, but is the DPS style. So as I said, this class is primarily a dot-based class. Most of its damage will come from its Shadow Word Pain or its Vampiric Touch. And a lot of that damage, and most of this class's damage, is going to be done once it reaches an X amount of insanity that it builds with its Mind Blast, its Mind Flay, its applications of its dots, or its Auspicious Spirits that proc from Shadow Word Pain ticks. And depending on which talents you select, you'll reach a certain amount of insanity, which will allow you to use your Void Eruption and go into Void form, at which point your damage has a static increase to its base damage, as well as an increase in haste levels. And so once you get into your Void form, the name of the game is you also do increased amount of insanity generation when you use your spells. So you want to be as efficient and as timely as possible when using your spells and going through your rotation so that you maximize the amount of insanity generation that you can do, because while you're in void form, your insanity will drain at an increasing rate. So it may drain at 10%, 2 seconds into void form, but it may drain at 50%, 10 seconds into void form. And once you reach zero insanity, you get pulled out of void form and you have to restart the whole process over again. So again, the name of the game is to maximize your amount of time in the void form by building insanity and doing increased damage that way. So next thing we look at, we're going to kind of walk through what are its strengths. So, we're going to talk to how strong is it single target wise, how strong is it cleave wise, how strong is it AoE wise. And kind of approach the specialization from that standpoint. So for Shadow Priest, they, again, like I said, they're like Affliction Locks. They need some time to ramp up their damage. So for single target wise, they can be effective and they can do very good single target damage. We're seeing it right now in live. But again, you're not going to be a bursty class. You're not going to see those 3 million out of the gate DPSs. Obviously, we're going to see a stat squish in BFA. But you're not going to see huge numbers right out of the start. It's going to take you a while to build up. But once the fight goes on, you're going to see huge amounts of damage, especially in execute phases if you've taken the Serenity or Madness talent. And so for cleave strength, Shadow Priest can do good cleave on 2 target, but they really start to shine on their cleave target damage once they get 3+ targets. Their ability to multi-dot and then, go through their rotations in void form, as well as use their AoE, their Mind Seer, can keep them in void form for a very long time, which really increases the damage and the tick rate of their dots on all the targets, and you will really see their numbers start to climb in 3+ target cleave situations. So for AoE, they can be strong and they can be bursty, but their burst even takes a little bit of setting up to do. So if you are going to be in a group or a raid where you have a lot of really bursty AoE classes, Fire Mages, Elemental Shamans, Demon Hunters right now on live, even some Warrior stuff, your burst AoE is just not there. There are some talents that you can take that, yeah, you can use them, but if the ads are going to die relatively quickly, there's no point. You might as well just focus on your single target and or cleave, and let everybody else do the AoE. But if you can get set up and do some burst AoE, you can use, the name is eluding me on the spells, and these are some kinks I'll have to work out for later on episodes, but there's a new spell in alpha where you can cast it on a single target, and every single target, I think it's within a 15-yard radius of that target, you can apply Shadow Word Pain to everything. and then start running through your mines here. And obviously, if you've taken your Shadow Crash, you can throw that out there too and just do some crazy AoE numbers. Again, if there's other bursty AoE, what's up?
So wait, so did you say there was an ability so you can spread your dots now,
Yep, just
or
Shadow Word Pain,
something
not
like that?
Vamp Touch.
Yeah, but still, because I mean that's always been one of the turn-offs for me about Shadow Priest is that I need to dot everything up again and again. So,
Right.
um, I mean it's probably what some people find fun. I find it a little bit annoying.
So you have two different options here with Shadow Priest. You can go the misery route, or you can go, and again, this name is eluding me, but the AoE spread of your Shadow Word Pain. And so if you're in a cleave situation, you may want to go misery, because misery will allow you to only cast one spell, but have it apply both your Vamp Touch and your Shadow Word Pain. So that's really good for target swapping. So because one of the downfalls of Priest in any dot based class sometimes, especially if the ads die quickly, is you have to get your dots going, and that takes time. So if the ads are going to die in 3 seconds, there's really no point for you to even try and apply your dots and get your damage rolling. So the quicker you can do that, the better you're going to be set up. And then, so again, like I said, there's two different routes you can go with Shadow. You can either go the misery route, or you can go the AoE spreading of your Shadow Word Pain. Both prove to be very useful in unique situations. And so I think the idea here is, you can kind of manipulate the talents so that you can be viable in a cleave situation, or even an AoE situation. And then even within the AoE situation, you can base it off depending on what other classes you have in your group, be it Mythic Plus or Raids. But I was testing all this stuff on the training dummies in Stormwind, and it was kind of crazy, the numbers I was seeing. And I was kind of watching. I didn't have damage meters at the time when I was doing it, but I was watching the amount of insanity generation I was doing, playing around with these, and it was kind of crazy. So it definitely leads me to believe that you can do some crazy AoE numbers. And just to provide some validity to what I am saying, guys, I did main a Shadow Priest for a while in BFA, and I have kept up with my in Legion, and I have kept up with my Shadow Priest in Legion. So I'm very, very familiar with the class. It is one of my favorite classes to play in the game. So I'm not completely ignorant when I'm talking to you about this stuff. But mobility.
Sure.
Let's talk mobility. It's a dot-based class, so they're initially just naturally going to be inherently more mobile. Their damage isn't going to drop off from movement like you would see with some other classes, because their damage is going to keep going. There is, you can take some execute talents, primarily with Surrender to Madness, which allows you to cast on the move for the entirety of the generation of Surrender to Madness. So if you have certain points on high mobility fights where you're going to need to push past some phases, that might be worthwhile looking into. But otherwise, you can just you have the ability to spam your Shadow Word Pain for small amounts of insanity generation while you're on the move. And so this class is, like I said, they don't drop. What's up? You look like you're going to say something there, Marty.
Yes, so Surrender to Madness has gotten a change, right? Because in Legion, when you drop out of Void Form, then you die, right? Or well, when it expires, you die, or something like that. I haven't mained up Shadow Priest. I'm not completely sure about the mechanic, but you end up dead if you don't play it right. But they've changed this now, right?
Yeah. Not only do you end up dead on live, you end up unresable.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's one of the caveats right now on live with Surrender to Madness. Is like Marty said, once you fall out of Void Form while you're in Surrender to Madness, you're done. You're no longer, you can't res, you can't be res, nothing. You're out of the fight permanently. However, I was actually going to talk about this later, but since Marty brought it up, we'll go ahead and shine some light on it now.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. It's all good. It's fine. So Surrender to Madness on BFA, you have the buff for 1 minute. So you can go in and out of Void Form as much as you need or want or are able to during that 1 minute. And during that 1 minute, you will have increasingly more insanity generation. So you can stay in Void Form even longer. However, once you fall out of Void Form and Surrender to Madness, so once Surrender to Madness ends, you will have 30 seconds where you cannot do any insanity generation. So that means no Void Form, nothing. You're just going through your rotation, just base damage. However, I will tell you that when I was testing this, I was really scared that I was going to feel very, very useless for 30 seconds, and that was far beyond the case. That 30 seconds ended much faster than I thought it would. However, that might change once I get the ability to get into a raid situation and test it out. But I foresee Serenity Madness being extremely useful as a DPS cooldown for fights in particular that are going to have execute phases, be it in the middle of the fight or at the end of the fight, that you're just going to have to really ramp up damage for. So that actually brings me into the next section I want to talk about, and that is DPS cooldowns. And so, like I said, this class naturally has a cooldown built into it, which is its Void Form. And it can obviously, like we've already talked about, spec into Serenity Madness for execute phases. It also has its Mindbender or its Shadow Fiend, depending on if you take the Mindbender talent, which is another cooldown that you can use and talent into for increased damage and or insanity generation, depending on the fight and what your needs are. And you're probably asking yourself, why would you not always spec into the Mindbender, increased damage, and insanity generation talent? Well, there are other talents on that tier, depending on the fight, that are more useful to you. And so they are kind of forcing us, at least from what I've seen on the classes I've looked at so far, to some situations where you're having to choose between different cooldowns, whereas you normally would like the ability to take all of them. Well, I mean, we'd always like the ability to take all of them, but yeah, so that's what's going on in Mindberry. You won't always want to take that talent. As of right now, that may be subject to change, like I said earlier. And so it has a few strong DPS cooldowns that are really nice to use. And so utility wise, this class is kind of a, anytime you think of utility, you think of shamans, right? And they are kind of the bread and butter utility. But I think priests have a lot of utility that people don't necessarily think of. Right now, Shadow Priest have their AoE stun. On live, they have, you were seeing a lot of it in the beginning of live, where Shadow Priests were taking the Vamp Embrace legendary and pairing it with their Vamp Embrace, and they were, a lot of groups were running 2 Shadow Priests, and they could effectively gain another healing cooldown out of it. But you won't have the legendary in BFA, so unless they do something weird with Azerite armor, Vamp Embrace will likely go back to what it was without the legendary, but it'll still be useful. You'll probably see a lot of people using it to aid their groups in Mythic Pluses, or even oh shit moments in raids. So you do have that utility as well. You also have the utility of shields. So again, it's not very strong, but it's useful. You might as well use it, and they're obviously, they have their off heals too. So I can't tell you how many times I've played a hybrid class in Mythic Pluses, and I found myself healing stuff because the healer just couldn't keep up. Or even in raids, So they have some pretty good utility that I think people should probably take a second look at. But we'll move on. So survivability. They are a clothy class, so they're going to be naturally squishy. However, like I said earlier, Shadow Priest have some natural leeching built into their class with their dots. They have dispersion at their disposal, where they can reduce all of the incoming damage, as well as stop their insanity generation. So again, here's another situation where Blizzard is forcing you. You can either save your dispersion to keep yourself in void form for longer, or you can use dispersion as a defensive cooldown. It's really up to you, whatever's going to benefit you most in each given situation, but it is at your disposal if you need to use it to stay alive, as well as, again, like I said earlier, your off heals. So priests do have some things at their disposal to help mitigate their normal squishiness, so they aren't just going to fall over like a paper doll, hopefully. So I kind of want to round up. This is kind of how right now we've tailored each of these. Just kind of a general feel of what we think about the specialization in the class, and then also what is our likelihood for us to choose this class as a main. And so for me in particular right now with Shadow, I've always liked the Shadow Priest class. So I'm kind of biased in that regard. But with what I did experience on main, it is very comparable to the Legion playstyle. It can be a bit frustrating with how much quicker you can fall out of void form in BFA currently than you do in live. That took a bit of an adjustment, but it also it felt easier to get back into void form. So I felt like there was the trade-off was you don't stay in void form as long, but you could pop in and out of it quicker. So it just kind of averaged itself out, I felt like. And then,
I mean, when I was on the beta, I played a little bit of the Shadow Priest just for leveling purposes, and I mean, the obviously I don't know how it'll be in a raiding situation, but from a leveling perspective, it actually felt quite good that you were in and out of these void form fairly quick, because that's also always a thing that felt a little bit weird to me. That I'm fighting 2 mobs, they're going to void form, they're dead, and then I'm there in void form for no apparent reason. So
yeah, and you're going to have situations like that. Like right now, if you're any sort of progressive raider, normal, heroic, or even mythic, God, even LFR right now, if you're walking out in the real like the world killing mobs, like you're always gonna have this situation. Like I can't tell how many times I waste Ascendance or Ice Fury procs on my shaman because I one shot things. So yeah, you're gonna have that. That's just kind of the leveling process. But so to kind of round up, I like this class. Like I said, it does have some frustrations, but I don't think those frustrations are strong enough to outweigh my overall likeness for or liking of this class. And I do like the fact that it has an answer for almost every situation in the game right now. Some classes can feel lackluster in certain situations, whereas this class has something in its toolkit for everything. It feels like so. Right now, for me, my likelihood for this class to be a main is medium to medium well, kind of like I like my steaks. So that's where I kind of stand with things. So before we move on to the next spec, I felt like Marty's already asked a bunch of questions. Did either of you, Oreo, did you get a chance to play around with Shadow at all on the PTR there?
Yeah, I have. I leveled. This was probably a couple builds ago, but I did level a Shadow Priest a few levels. The one thing I found kind of frustrating with them though is, as far as leveling concerned, they have very poor survivability. They take a huge amount of hits before they can kill something. So you find yourself at half health just based off of one single pull. Then you have to heal yourself up and then try and move on. There's a lot more downtime than there is with certain other classes. I found that even leveling as holy, you could at least keep your health high enough between pulls that it was either quicker or just as quick. So maybe that's something they have to address, that
Sure.
they increase like self-healing a little bit or something along that line.
Did you have any situation where you tried to interweave in the fears or the stuns to kind
Mm.
of to alleviate that issue?
Yeah, so with the mind bomb was what I was running. Usually I would pull 2 or 3 if I felt brave with that, drop that, and then kind of use it as a kiting mechanism, back up, apply more dots. I find that the dots drop a lot faster in BFA than
Mm-hmm.
they do in Legion, with the fact that it's no longer as long as an extension in void form. So
Well, and that's probably one thing I probably forgot to that I should have mentioned was one of the changes in BFA is that on live your void bolt will increase the duration of your dots as they so if you have 12 seconds left on a boss on live and you hit the mob with your void bolt, it will increase the duration by 3 seconds. So effectively, you can keep your dots up for as long as you need. Whereas now that doesn't exist, so you do or are forced into a situation where you have to reapply dots. So I definitely agree with you there. That felt bad, I guess I should say.
Unless it is built into the Azeroth gear at some point.
Sure, yeah, and again, that's something we don't
know
know.
that.
Yeah.
yeah,
So overall, what was your feeling other than being a little bit, obviously you've now countered my point of saying it does have some survivability. But overall, what was your feeling? Did you like the class or what?
yeah, I like the class. I was trying Surrender to Madness, and it's very, very risk reward.
Mm,
You have a minute that you're doing a lot of damage, but then at the end of that minute, you take 90% health, and if you're not ready for it, you're probably gonna die.
sure. And you can still talent into things like Void Torrent and whatnot. So there are some talents if you are going to take Surrender to Madness you can take to prolong your time periods of being into or in your Void form. So again, that's probably a situation where if you are running Surrender to Madness, you would likely not ever really want to use your Dispersion as a defensive cooldown. But again, this is some stuff theory crafters are going to have to play with, and like Marty and has said, and I've said, and Oreo said, there could be some of these things that are going to be fixed via Azerite armor. We just don't know. So cool. Do either of you two have anything else to add for Shadow before we move on to Holy Priests?
Shadow has life grip back now, so
Oh
that's
yeah,
something new.
yeah, um, yeah. So if I main Shadow Priest, everyone look out because I'm going to be trying to grip you all off the bridge. Yeah.
Oh my god, I had so much fun with that spell.
It's back for Shadow now, so now they control people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Well, let's move on to Holy Priest here. So Marty, man, you're up.
Hmm. Oh, hello. So, Holy Priests. I think the core mechanic that they got in Legion, the way that they play out in Legion, I think that they're working a little bit more with that. They're expanding on it, but basically, down to the core, it's a reactive healing class. You use your spells. Some of them have like a medium cooldown, and those you can shorten the cooldowns by using your abilities. So it's basically just um, use all your abilities and everything should work out, right? Um,
Press all the
uh,
buttons.
Yeah.
press them all. Um, so yeah, overall you have like your normal heals that you want to use most of the times. Then you have uh, you have an AoE heal on a like I said a medium cooldown. You have a big single target heal on a medium cooldown. You also have a damage ability on a medium cooldown, but that's not something we use too often as a healer. And then with your normal spells, so for instance, the large AoE heal, you can you can shorten the cooldowns on that one by using AoE heals, your normal AoE heal, and the same with the single target heal. So that's basically how it works at the moment, and it seems like they're continuing with that, and that is something I'm quite happy about because that's a playstyle that I really liked in Legion. So I'm happy about that, and actually they have a talent that I'll talk about later that actually plays a little bit more into this playstyle as well. So that's pretty cool. But let's go through the spreadsheet that we have made here. So single target healing, it's decent. It's not the best, but I don't think it's the worst either. It's just Holy Priest can single target heal, but it's definitely not one of the biggest strengths. So if I had, for instance, a Holy Pala, I would probably use him instead for the single target healing. But they have their moments where they can shine, especially when it's the big single target heal is off cooldown. Cleave healing. They As a Holy Priest, you can cleave heal. It will be a little bit wasteful though, because you will basically be using the same abilities that you will probably also use for your proper AoE heals. So it can seem a little bit wasteful. So if you have other classes in your raid, for instance, that can fill that role, I would use them instead for cleave healing. But in worst case scenario, uh, Holy Priest can cleave heal.
So when you say cleave heal, are you strictly referring to binding heal?
No, it's well, binding heal is a possibility, but because you have one of them is you target one, you heal yourself, and the third one is the third person you heal is a smart heal. I don't think that changed, but what I'm talking about is that you will probably want to use your and I cannot remember the name, but the AoE cooldown you have is probably what you would use, but you would try and hit as many people with it. Basically, you want to hit all 5 people with it.
Sanctify
But I
or
mean,
Serenity? One of those two.
Sanctify, yeah,
Okay.
that's the one. Um, but I mean, but for cleave heal, if it's only 3 people, you can still do it. But it's wasteful though. So as I said, if you have others, then other classes who can fill that role, then you should probably use those instead. Um,
Well,
hmm?
I've always found that holy priests are more of like an all-around tool than a specific tool, right? They do things well, but there's always a
Yeah,
class that does them better.
yeah, exactly. That describes it really well, actually. We're not awesome at it, but we're not bad at it either. We're just sort of there.
They're not the best, but they're not the
We
worst. We can move on.
no, yeah, exactly. That's it. Nothing else you need to know. No, I mean we can cover all bases.
Yeah.
So we're not bad, especially in fights where that's like because let's move into AoE strengths. We're not like if it's a fight where there's a constant damage going on, like a damage debuff on the whole raid, then we should be on top of the meters because of our mastery. Because what we do is when every time we heal something, we actually apply a hot to it as well. And the more mastery we have, the more that hot heals. And so if there's like a constant damage going on all the time, then we're usually really, really strong because we have that damage, that healing ticking all the time. But as a bursting healing class, that's not really us. Not compared to other classes, at least. We have a few things in the toolkit we can do to burst out a little bit of healing, but it's, again, we're decent at it. It's not our strong suit. So yeah, Holy Priest is like the big toolbox. We can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Except mobility, which we're moving into now.
Can't move.
Because that is basically the Holy Priest weakness, and I think it will continue in BFA as well. That mobility, we prefer to stand still. We don't have too many spells we can use on the move. Obviously, the usual move out of stuff, you move out of fire. It's all right, we can do that, but as long as you have to move like across a bridge and heal at the same time, then it doesn't work. So yeah, mobility, I feel like is still an issue, and it's just down to how the Holy Priest class really just work.
Sure.
But yeah, let's move into some healing cooldowns, because we actually have quite a few we can play around with. We have Guardian Spirit. I don't think that has changed at all. It's basically a cheat death mechanic that you can target on someone, maybe the tank, for instance, or a group member that's a little bit too slow to move out of some fire or something. And if they die, then they're getting healed, and they don't die, basically. So we have Divine Hymn. One of the things that I really liked about Divine Hymn in Legion is that it was chained together through the artifact weapon with Prayer of Mending. So if you had a few Prayer of Mendings up and you started healing with Divine Hymn, then the Prayer of Mending would heal and not consume a charge and jump around to all the raid members, which I thought that was a pretty cool mechanic, and it actually also boosted if you had more up, it actually boosted your healing throughput, and it's also called sort of like a little bit of a skill level, because you need to to keep your Prayer of Mendings up on as many people as possible before you actually use your Divine Hymn. So you have to set it up to get the maximized healing out of it. And I really like that, but it seems like it's going away in BFA, unless it, as we already mentioned a few times, it will be an Azeroth armor at some point. But I think the really new interesting thing is the talent and the max level talent. Right now we have 3 to choose from. The 2 others aren't that interesting, but I think this one is. It's called Holy Word Salvation. What it does is that it places a Prayer of Mending on everyone with 2 charges and Renew. So you get a lot of healing out of this, plus you get the Prayer of Mendings, which will jump to other teammates as well. Plus you got the Renew as well, which is going to. It seems like Renew is going to be a little bit more interesting in this expansion that it is currently. So so this is. It looks really interesting. Obviously, it comes with a downside as well, and that is that a lot of the other talents all of a sudden don't sound that interesting anymore. Yeah, I think I'll save this for the conclusion later on why this is. So let's move on to utility. We got a stamina buff back, which I forgot to use all the time through the dungeon that I played through, because I'm so not used to that anymore. We get Symbol of Hope for it's a baseline ability now. It's something you could talent into in Legion. Now every Holy Priest will get it. It's basically free mana casting for all the healers in your group. We got Life Grip, Feathers, and also a single target stun. So so that's a good deal of utility that you can use all around. Not much has changed though. Survivability, are we squishy? We are clothy. Of course we are. We can spec into being a little bit less squishy. So and obviously we are healers, so we should just heal ourselves, right? So, but yeah. So yeah, the general feel is that I think the toolkit is still there. The toolkit is still the same, and it feels as good as it always has been to me, at least. But I think the overall pace feels a little bit slow. I'm not sure if it's due to the power level of the character, because it is like, on the beta you create a character that doesn't have like the best gear, or like it's not so the power level might be a little bit low. I don't know. Or maybe the issue is with scaling is also a possibility, because I was 110, the tank was 120, but it really felt like even though I spam healed him with my flash heal, his health went the wrong direction. It didn't feel like it went up at all. So
Marty, you're not supposed to damage the tank. You're supposed to heal him.
Yeah, exactly. It really felt like I was damaging them and not healing them. So I don't know if it's because the class is underperforming, or if it's the tank pulled too much, maybe, I don't know, or if it's some of these issues. It just didn't feel that good, but I mean, it's something time will tell, I guess. But I think overall, the current state of the beta, it doesn't really feel like there's too much choice in your talent trees, because I think most people should and will probably go towards the whole word salvation, and when you if that's your main goal, then you look through the talent tree, and then there's a few obvious choices. For instance, there's the renew talent that you probably want to do, that boost that and things like that. So everything seems a little bit more set in stone if you're going towards that, and that feels a little bit bad and sad, I think. But maybe it's also because they still need to do, I don't know if I don't think they're done with priest, to be honest, but because it feels like the talents that are in there are still geared towards the old the artifact weapon and the legendaries, and that you can get and things like that. So I think we might actually see some changes and I hope we will see some changes to the talents so far. So yeah, quick rundown. Any questions?
So right now, what if you had to give a kind of an assessment of as how likely you would be to play this class as a main going into BFA? Where do you lie?
I think it's fairly high, to be honest, because I've always played a holy priest. The first character I made was a priest back in vanilla. So it's always a class that I fall back to. It's always where I end up towards the end of an expansion if I choose to change mains. I don't know why. I think it is the toolkit. I really like the toolkit of the holy priest, but so I think the likelihood is fairly high. But that being said, but that has nothing to do with the class. It's just because I feel like I want to try something new. So that's why I sort of want to try not to pick Holy Priest again.
Yeah. I'm looking here, Marty, on your side notes. You have a YouTube link down here that you posted?
Yeah, I just quickly linked to the, what's it called? Fat Boss TV, where they go through the Holy class, the Holy Priest classes, abilities, and things like that. So they basically just go through everything. So it's just nice little source, I guess, if you don't have access to the beta.
Cool. One of the things that I wanted to discuss with you is, and Oreo was he and I were on Discord when I was messing around with Holy. There's one talent that's a 12-minute cooldown.
Yeah, that's salvation.
Okay,
Oh yeah, I sorry, I completely forgot about that.
Okay.
But because salvation, what it actually does is, yes, sure, it's a 12-minute cooldown, but you can actually reduce that cooldown. So you have, like, let's see, if you pick this talent, then you basically will have 3 tiers of abilities. You have the tier 1 abilities, which is the normal a single target heal, normal AoE heal. Then you have your second tier, which is the medium cooldown ones, the Sanctify and the other one. So when you use the tier 2 abilities, then you will actually reduce the cooldown of this talent.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're just playing more into that whole thing that they created with Legion, where when you use your abilities, you reduce the cooldown of your other things, and that's. I think he said in the video that if you basically just spammed all your abilities like nonstop, then you could probably get the cooldown down to 2.5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I tried it out, and it was, how long was it, Oreo? Like 3 to 4 minutes of me spamming Binding Heal and going through the entirety of my mana pool before I went from the 12 minutes all the way down to being able to use it again. But obviously some of that's going to be negated in a fight when you are, obviously you may not always be spamming buttons, and obviously a 10-minute fight, whatever. If it's anything live, all the fights are going to be 10 minutes from here on out. Like, Jesus. But yeah, no, I definitely, like, Oreo was kind of laughing at me because when I used that spell, I was like, holy shit, this spell has some huge potential to be OP. Um, I agree with you. Priests are not the best at any one respective thing. Like, obviously paladins are going to shine through on your single target. They are going to be your bread and butter tank healers, and obviously, there's some interesting mechanics with their beacons. Monks are the king of cleave and mobile single target healing. Shamans, you name it, they have some piece of tool in their belt to deal with everything. They're shamans. But priests have always felt like if you just need a well-rounded healer to round out your healing team, throw a priest in the mix, man. Throw a holy priest. They are fantastic, and I love the way the holy word mechanics work in terms of lowering the cooldowns. You know what I mean? It's like when I was playing my shadow priest, I often side off healed as holy when we have healers not show up, stuff like that. And I don't know. To me, it was a lot of fun on AOE fights. You'd use your, because on both sides of the spells interact with one another. So when you use, like, for instance, when you use Holy Word Sanctify, it applies a buff to your prayer of healing. So the next 5 prayer of healings, if you use them within that window of time, are also buffed. Well, by that point, the whole raid should be topped off, and then you only need to cast a few more, and your Sanctify's back off cooldown. And so for like, I always think back to Chronomatic because there was huge chunks of, like, on a time schedule raid damage, so I could always have stuff back up and ready to go and deal with stuff as they came. But
yeah, exactly, and it's kind of like the good old chakra system, but instead of you have to switch stands, but instead of you having to switch stands, it's based off what abilities you use instead. And it's I really liked how it worked in Legion, and I'm happy to see that they're not changing up too much in BFA. So I just hope, because I think that's one of the issues in Legion, is that Holy Priests were really, really strong in the beginning, but we are not really that interesting towards the end of the expansion. So I think that's my only grief with Holy Priest so far.
hey, man, you do you, boo.
I mean, I think that Ryan and I have raided with enough Holy Priests to see that in order to optimize the system with the Holy Words that they have, it seems like you have to do overhealing to get it back up when you want it or when you need it.
Yeah.
So we've found that if that's the way it's going to go, are you going to be like just blowing through as much mana as you can to get this 12-minute cooldown all the way down to being able to use it multiple times, and then have it like what is that going to look like for the other healers?
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it probably depends on the fight as well, because obviously there's probably fights where it would make no sense to burn through all your mana and everything, and then there probably is 1 or 2 fights where it's like, yeah, go nuts.
I could see Salvation being extremely powerful in a situation where the raid is going to take a large chunk of sustained damage. So it's not just going to be, here's 30 million damage split up between the raid and that's it. It's going to be like, here's 100 million damage over the next 15 seconds, and the whole raid is really spread out. And it may not necessarily be like everybody takes the same amount of damage at the same time. It just would be your raid health. If you're looking at your raid frames, could be doing this, up and down, left and right. And
Mm.
whereas the salvation would be extremely powerful in a situation like that. But like you said, Oreo, there is the caveat that how do you really plan around a spell where you may be effectively asking somebody, I would need you to use your cooldown here, but then for the rest of the fight, I need you, like, I just go off to the side and spam through your mana pool because we need your cooldown here in another 2 minutes.
Mm.
That makes it kind of hard to plan around using it multiple times because most fights, we joked about every fight being 10 minutes earlier, but most fights are anywhere from 3.5 minutes to 7 minutes, right? So again, if you can lower it to 2.5 minutes with spamming spells, which realistically means you're probably looking more towards 3.5 to 4 minute cooldown, because you're not going to want to spam your spells. It's going to be interesting to see how that cooldown gets incorporated and people use it as a strat. So we could talk about this forever, but we don't have all the time in the
Mm.
world. So let's give Oreo his time to shine here, and we will let him do his inaugural appearance. So let's talk this.
Discipline Priest. Oh, yeah. I mean, as far as Discipline Priest, they've changed quite a bit over the last few expansions. Um, they went from Mist Pandaria being solely like a bubble class to Legion. They wanted to implement more of a DPS into the healing hybrid. They're continuing that in a way, being proactive healing, using absorbs to prevent all the damage incoming, and then using the atonement that you've applied with the bubbles or your single turret healing to then use your damage abilities to heal again. Um, as I said, it really relies on proactive healing. If you fall behind, you are kind of screwed with this spec. With that being said, their AoE strength is just enormous. Being able to run around while moving and bubble your entire raid, like you prevent damage before it even begins. So how do you? How does another healer compare to that? Really, um, single target wise, they're fairly strong. You're able to weave with Shadow Mend and using your bubbles to negate the ticking dot, which is very strong, I find. But they're very weak in cleave and dungeon healing right now. I feel that it may just be with the pugs that you're with that they just don't know mechanics. They're standing in crap, and you blow through your mana trying to Shadow Mend the heck out of them before they they get anywhere, like get out of a puddle or realize, hey, I needed to pop a defensive before. Um, yeah, they have quite a lot of cooldowns that can be kind of weaved together using barrier or a new talent that Blizzard has put in, making it a raid-wide bubble, instant bubble, pretty much, which I think is going to be overpowered. They're going to have to change that eventually, I think. Um, Using Radiance weaving with your penance to heal burst damage is going to be another thing that you can use for quick AoE burst healing. And then with the changes to Rapture, being able to put 200% larger bubbles on specific targets is going to help big time if a tank's taking big damage or somebody's doing mechanics which require them to take large damage. That'll be something that you're going to want to save that for. Um, as we said before, we got the stamina buff back, which is huge. I think that's going to make priests pretty much mandatory to come to raids now. You're going to want at least one priest, which I think is what Blizzard has kind of wanted to mix it up and have everybody bring at least a couple different classes instead of the class stacking that's been happening, especially in Legion. Wanting to bring immunities in Tomb was probably the biggest issue that a lot of guilds had. If you didn't have 3 mages to ice block something, then you just didn't do that fight very well. Having the stamina buff for priest will definitely help them with, I guess, the having to come to raids, because discipline right now is so niche that you don't see a lot of them in, like, we don't have one in our current guild. And I don't think that anyone other than myself has really pushed disc too much
Not
through
that we've
Tomb and
seen.
whatnot. No. Um, what else is on the spreadsheet? Utility, life grip. I mean, we talked about that earlier with Shadow Priest. It can really save someone's butt. I guess you could always say something like Agrimar. If it's used properly, your tanks mess up a mechanic and they get knocked off. Being able to grip them back in and continue the fight is huge. I mean, Ryan and I went through, 3 hours of watching tanks get knocked off.
Yeah.
It gets too much after a while. To be able to have something like that would definitely be a huge thing. Survivability. So the interesting way with priests and their survivability is they have a stacking buff that happens when they take a hit that they take reduced damage. So if you're going to get one shot by a mechanic, there's not much that's going to be done there. But if you're getting hit consecutively by something, you're going to be able to take it better. I mean, you're probably going to see that coming up more in PvP, where you're going to have somebody attacking you and this buff stacks up quite quickly. But in raid scenario, probably not so much.
Sure.
I mean, general feel wise, I think it's a class that you have to be very fast, very on your toes. You're thinking 5, 10, 15, even a minute ahead in fights, which, as I said, if you fall behind, then you really struggle to make up for that lost time. With that said, I've always really liked the kind of classes that you have to think ahead. You really have to envision how the fight's going to go, who you're with, what kind of cooldowns you're going to need at what point. So for me, I would probably end up rolling disc with its current rendition right now. I don't know if either of you guys have really tried out disc too much.
I've played a little bit in Legion, and I think I like the idea behind it, but I don't think it's my playstyle either. So I don't know. I've tried a lot. I've tried to wrap my head around how to play it efficiently, and I haven't been able to. I know other people have. I know a few people have made it work, and it's just on my playstyle. I'd say. I like the idea, but I think it ends there, sadly.
I mean, the one thing to say how they've made it a lot better for BFA is that Power Word Shield now has no cooldown. They've gotten rid of Plea, which I always thought was a super awkward spell to have. You're like, okay, I'm going to use Plea to apply it to these 3 people, but now I'm going to shield this guy, and then it's trying to weave on top of trying to remember where you're at in a fight, what's coming, kind of thing. There's been a lot of times, like when we were raiding a tomb, I ran Discipline Priest all the way up to what fight was that? That was Sisters, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it was beyond frustrating. If you got behind on it, you just felt like somebody kicked you in the nuts, really. You just dropped on the meters. You did nothing for your group.
Yeah, and I think to me that's one of the big things that if I had to pick reasons the class was kind of deterred from me wanting to play it would be, for one, it is a huge learning curve compared to other classes. A lot of classes have just kind of a general intuitive concept to it that you kind of pick up on. You know, warrior spam ignore pain, use taunt when you need to. Shadow Priest build spend, popping out of void form. You know, there's just a general concept that when you look at the spells, you kind of can tell, okay, these ones go here, these ones go here. I get it. And then from there, you kind of can decipher weird little dynamic nuances of how certain spells interact with each other and really hone in and max min your class, your rotation, and go from there. Whereas disc is such a uniquely different concept that, be it just hasn't been in the iteration that we're seeing it in for long enough and been popular enough that it just may be different. That's may it all be. But to me, it's just like, when I was playing around with it that one day, you and I were on talking on Discord, Oreo, I was just like, I looked, I'm like, holy shit, like what? Wait, I can use these 5 different spells here, and they do that. Like, okay, I get it. So, it's kind of like, what the hell's going on? So basically, but I do love the concept that here's a class that effectively damages to heal people. in
Mm.
concept, that doesn't always play out to be true. Because if you're throwing bubbles out on everybody, you're not exactly doing damage to heal them. But I do hope that Disc finds a more permanent place in raid compositions. I love the idea behind diversity in a raid group. I do love the idea that at least one of every single class should be brought to a raid group. Obviously, you're not going to bring one of every single class in every single station. There's not enough spots in a raid to do that. But like you said, if we can see at least one healing priest in every single group, not necessarily just one priest, because then you would eliminate shadow priests, and we're not going to do that. I hate you. But I would love to see discipline be more of a popular spec and be stronger. There was a lot of times throughout Legion that we saw a small sect of the player bases vouch for disc and play disc, but it was still such a small amount of people compared to the amount of holy priests you were seeing. Even if disc did have the potential to be better than holy, you just didn't see it.
No, and I think the issue with the spec is that I think it's a little bit like the hunter syndrome. There's the
What?
that like you need to be good at it, and if people aren't good at it, then they won't be brought, right?
Well, I mean, if we're talking mythic rating, absolutely. Ideally. I've been in some groups where there are people that were there that shouldn't have been there, but that's for another story, another day. But yeah, no, I agree with you, Marty. It's one of it is less forgiving, in my opinion, than other healing classes. Would you agree, Oreo?
Yeah, it definitely is. As I said, if you fall behind, it's a struggle to keep up. You're relying on other classes to pick up your slack. Then, if your job was to get all the bubbles out before this big wave of damage came in, but you were too busy trying to keep the tank up, and you only got 3 out of 20 people bubbled, well, now your raid takes pretty much spread damage on that.
To give one good example, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and even Josh from Method, when he talked about this fight, alluded to the fact, but Iminar, he was absolutely useless in between the platforms. Absolutely 100% useless. But his other 3 healers, and they only ran 4 healers for their kill, as my recollection is correct. But once they were on the platforms, he destroyed all of the other healers because of just the way disc works. And so his group they gambled and they took that risk of being effectively down a healer on the bridges so that they could be effectively have 2 more healers because he was healing, comparably to 2 of the other healers in the group, when they were dealing with the platforms themselves.
I mean, and a few things to look at the differences between Legion and BFA wise. Now you will be useful on that bridge with the way that Power Word Shield works. You'll be able to bubble that raid. They probably won't even take damage on the way over. You're able to spam it so quickly.
Now, are we running the risk of being in another situation where bubbles are the end all be all, everything wanted? Don't really care about the rest of the raid comp for healing wise?
Yeah, and Blizzard's tried to address that, saying that they don't want it to be as strong, but by nature, absorbs are the strongest heal. Preventing damage before it happens is the biggest thing you can do. If you don't have to deal with something because of a bubble, then that's better than having to deal with it with a healing cooldown.
Right.
Yeah, I remember certain raid fights in Pandaria where I could pretty much as a disc priest solo heal them, because if it was predictable damage, then I got you guys covered. Don't worry, you healers can just go sleep. So yeah, but we definitely don't want to end up there again, because I mean, I know it's fun for the disc priest, but I think the other healers want to have a job as well.
Well, before we wrap up today, I mean, is there anything just priest or BFA in general that we've seen that we feel like is noteworthy before we hit the 2 buttons to get out of here? You guys think of anything?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
Pretty much.
For those of you that are listening on the audio only version, I just sat here and watched 2 people give very befuddled looks on their faces. We had 2 seconds of utter silence. So, no, but again, guys, go ahead, Marty.
So, are you guys set into what you want to do in the next expansion? If it has to be DPS, it has to be heal, or don't you care? You just want to play something fun, or just to round it off? Real
I
quick.
thought so until we did the holy talk today.
Hey,
You were pretty.
what?
You're pretty
Are you
impressed
saying?
with Holy.
I was. So for those that don't know, and I'm sure I don't know if Marty know, but when I first started playing WoW way back in vanilla, actually prior to vanilla during the beta and alpha stages, I mained a holy paladin almost all the way up to AQ, and then I went off to college and I joined. I re-rolled Horde with some college roommates, and I made I made a holy priest for the rest of that expansion. In my raid tenureship, the rest of the expansion, I actually ended the expansion PvP mainly as a shadow priest, and then I did all of BC as a shadow priest. But I do. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you always have some level of fondness for something you've done in the past, and I I made a holy priest for a very long period of time, and I haven't healed as a main in quite some time, but after seeing the potential, oh shit, this is awesome, watch huge healing numbers go up, and just kind of envisioning myself as a holy priest in a raid in one of those oh shit moments and pressing that salvation button and watching everybody's health just stabilize and then top off, it was like, oh man, and just talking about it today. I've done some off healing in Mythic Plus and for raids this expansion, but I haven't done it as a main. So after talking today, my level of interest to potentially be a healing main is going up. I won't say it's quite
Okay,
the
okay.
top, but
I thought you were being sarcastic, and I think it just speaks to the nature of how we do the other podcast that I do, the Blue Recluse. Because over there, when I say something, they're just on me to make bad jokes or make me look bad. So I thought that was what you were doing right there, but you actually want to play holy. Okay, fair enough. I got
I
you.
like Holy Priest.
I could get behind that.
I may even take the time to learn Disc, and get past the moments,
It takes
But
a
yeah,
lot of practice.
Yeah.
I actually think the disc is starting to look a little bit more interesting to me as well, because I think I got a little bit turned off by the whole plea deal as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I might actually look into it on the beta.
But I think there's something to
When
be
we're done.
said for any priest in a healing role. With the way gear and everything is going to work in BFA, it's not going to be as difficult to swap back and forth between specs. Theoretically, right
Mm,
now, obviously that will either prove to be true or not once we learn more about Azerite armor. But if it is readily easily to switch back and forth between Holy and Disc, if you're a progression raider, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to or couldn't be able to or willing to be able to switch back and forth depending on which might be better for your raid comp and or
what?
fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
and I'm kind of a character whore, as Oreo knows with this expansion. I get tired of things and I like switching it up, and yeah, so you're always going to hear me advocate for the flexibility in terms of people being able to play different classes, be in different roles, stuff like that. And that's just a personal opinion of mine. It doesn't necessarily have to be true for everyone else, but
I
that's
was
kind of
gonna
where
say
I'm at.
over the last couple, not even couple months, over the last month, I think you've changed what you
Mm-hmm.
want to do probably 8 times.
Yeah. So here, okay, before we round out today, we're obviously the very last episode we do of Battle for Main. We're all going to publicly declare what we're going to roll into BFA with as our main. But as of right now, what are your top 3 choices for a main? Before we, obviously as we start this project, what are your initial thoughts of what you want to play as a main? And Marty, we'll start with you.
Oh God, I've been all over the place. I don't know. I think I will not say priest, because I think I want to try and move away from it. That was kind of like why I said yes to this whole audio. I think shaman at the moment is quite high on the priority list, um, and druid as well, because druid can do everything, right? So I mean, it's an easy choice. If you want to do one thing, then you just go do that. If you want to be melee, you can do everything. But the last one is probably coming as a shocker to a lot of people, and that's warrior. Actually, I fooled around with a warrior in Legion and enjoyed it, smashing stuff.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, Mr. Canada, what about you?
If we're breaking it down to specs or classes, I think right now top 3 would be well, currently I play Affliction Warlock, but I think if I was going to continue Warlock, it was going to be Demonology. I mean, they're looking
Super
way
cool.
better. Yeah, they're definitely way better than what you see in Legion right now. Displaced Priest probably being second on that one. I don't mind Holy. I guess I like the disc style.
Mm.
But for third class Warrior probably as well. You get kind of the two things. You get the big number smash with arms, or you get the fast flurry with fury. The one that remains to be seen is still Prot. I don't know if they know what the heck to do with Prot right now, but we've watched them get nerfed like 2 or 3 builds in a row. We're not really sure what's going on there, but they have a plan for it, and I guess we'll go through it when we get there.
Man, I'd say nerfed is a bit of an understatement. They've been cutting off one leg at a time, and now they're moving on to the cutting the arms off. But yeah, hopefully they'll find a solution for that. As for myself, I primarily am Rogue is the top of my list right now. Primarily Assassination Rogue. My goal going into this project was to main a character I've never played as a main in a raid setting, and Rogue is one of the few classes I have yet to main. So Assassination Rogue is the top of my list. I'm gonna keep Shaman on the list as well, Elemental Shaman, just because that's currently what I main and I really enjoy it. But I'm putting a big asterisk next to that. If they're just, I don't know. I'm not entirely happy with some of the changes they've made to them, but we'll keep it on the list just from a nostalgic standpoint. And then for my third one, it's kind of a toss-up right now between either the Druids for the Coltirian forms, or Demon Hunter, just because I like the fast-paced playstyle of Demon Hunters and the mobility. I mean, honestly, you could just tell me to go stand off in the corner and fell rush around, and I'd be fine.
Isn't that what Cole always used to do?
Yeah, pretty much. So before we head out here, I wanted to take the time. We've got a few people in the chat that have been either BSing with us. Michael, hello from the Blue Recluse, and Alessander, who just joined us with a wave. Thank you guys for popping over and watching us live. So I don't have anything else to add for today. Do you guys?
Nope.
No?
Go Holy Priest.
So that's going to wrap up episode 1 for the Battle for a Main project, guys. And like I said, if you think that there's anything else you want us to cover in terms of talking points for each specialization, let us know. If you have any sort of points of critique, let us know. We're going to learn and grow with this project as we take on each class and specialization. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to hit these 2 buttons. Actually, I'm going to hit these 2 buttons after Marty says something.
Are we announcing? Are we announcing what class we're looking on next, or are we just going to do that privately? And then
we can announce it. I'm fine. It's whatever. No, transparency is key. So Demon Hunters, and then what was the other one? Do you guys remember?
No, I don't remember.
Marty,
Maybe Demon Hunter. Maybe we'll go Demon Hunter.
And
we'll discuss what else we'll do.
So that's what we'll do. We'll leave the second class up in the air. I would likely not choose Druids just to avoid a super long episode. And so if you guys have a second class you'd like us to cover, preferably one with only 3 specs, which is everything but Druids and Demon Hunters. So let us know what you think, and we'll leave that one to be a surprise. But Demon Hunters for sure are going to be covered in the next episode. Also, next week, guys, we are going to be taking the week off. Marty is going to play around with being an adult and having a real life. His girlfriend is in town, so we will wish him adieu. And I will also be drunk all weekend. I am graduating college finally after 13 years of higher education. And Oreo, I don't know, he'll be doing Canadian things. Maybe he'll be chugging maple syrup. Who knows?
Actually, I'm getting the hell out of Canada. I'm going to Mexico.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm tired of the snow, man. I'm getting out of here.
I feel you, man. I'm in the north. I'm in the Midwest and here in the U.S. and I'm sick of it. So I feel you. But yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for us. Tom jumped into the chat.
Tom.
Man, hi Tom.
Let's end the show. End the show here.
Hi Tom. Bye Tom. Anyways, that's gonna do it for us, guys. I'm gonna hit these 2 buttons, and we will see you in 2 weeks live on the show. See you guys. You guys want to find Marty, you can find him over at the Blizzard podcast he does, where they talk all things Blizzard games, the Blue Recluse. If you want to find him on Twitter, you can find him at Unamathil. For me, guys, if you want to find me, and personally, you can find me over on my Twitch and Twitter, which are both at Mega Irish Gaming, or you can find me on my All Things Blizzard podcast, which I do with my good friend Dusty Porter, the Blizzard Umbrella. If you want to find us here on the show, you can find us at our Twitter account, which is at _TRC podcast, or you can find us on our email, theraidersconfessional@gmail.com, no apostrophe on the S. That being said, guys, Dusty, take us out of here, my man. See ya.
Sorry, I died. Was I supposed to stand in the green puddles or the orange ones?
Hey, get together over there, bud.
This show has been hosted by Dragon Powered Studios, and the intro and outro has been brought to you by Thankful Cow Solutions.
Moo.